Well, the impetus behind it is because as an architect, as you look around Harrisonburg, you see some interesting little urban spots, but you see a lot of downtown Harrisonburg that is suffering from, number one, the growth of the malls and the disappearance of mercantile activity downtown. Over the years, there were a lot of empty storefronts and whole buildings empty, and they stayed that way for months and years. And if you look a little bit north of the very core, the north part of downtown, urban renewal, which is a very interesting phrase because it was the death of urbanity when they demolished those neighborhoods and plunked buildings down in the middle of parking lots.
Project R4. Project R4. That was when they bulldozed that neighborhood and built it.
I didn't even know what it was called. But plunking a building down in the middle of a sea of asphalt and call that progress. The truth is that when automobiles came along, there were entrepreneurs and city people, and even the state ABC store. It worked. It was profitable, but it was very short-sighted. That kind of construction, that kind of building, doesn't build a tax base. If you go up to the north part of the downtown of Harrisonburg, nobody wants to be there. If that happens to be your bank, you'll go there. If you really want to buy hard liquor, you got to go to the ABC store, and you'll park, you go into your business, get in your car, and you will leave. There's no reason to be there. And cities, building cities is about building places. Cities are there's an inside and then an outside. There's the inside of the buildings. There's where we live and have the intimate aspects of our life. And then there's the outside, the public part of life. And any city where people want to live, you will find that it has that quality of a space and a place and places and structure in the built part of the city outside of the buildings. So when you come to Harrisonburg, you've got a very striking courthouse in the middle of Court Square. There's nothing like it in the state of Virginia, or really in a way nowhere. It's very special. Though you get outside of that, you don't have much of an urban environment. So I grew up here. I lived here much of my life. I moved away. I came back. I became an architect. I came back and worked in the city in a field other than architecture. Then I came back to architecture, and when I did that, I realized that I had something I could bring to the city, and that was an understanding of urbanity and how a city is built and how it's formed and what makes a city a special place. So it was a personal mission, and I was encouraged in my folly by my friends and acquaintances, other architects and other people that care about the city, and that's what really was the germination of the first little study that we did.
If people that came here tonight if they could take home one thing, what would you want that one thing to be out of seeing this presentation? What's the most important thing?
The most important thing is to realize that cities are made up of public places and public spaces that are formed by the buildings and the trees and the other accessory elements forming public space.
Where do people go from here? I mean, if you may have sparked a lot of people's imagination and their hopes and their desires to see downtown develop into something more, what would you encourage people to do? To start a petition, or to just start talking to local business owners? Or, I mean, is that even, where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would encourage, first of all, the biggest thing is for entrepreneurs to think this way and build this way and act this way, and in fact some are. City Exchange is a successful conversion of a warehouse into apartments for downtown, 30 of them. It's successful on the inside. The outside of it is not successful. It's just a very raw-looking parking lot right along a street. I hope they get to something as simple as planting a row of trees along the street. something as simple as changing the paving, and this would cost a little money. It's very simple, but it costs money. Take out the asphalt and the irregular pattern of paving and put a pedestrian scale paving in there. It would totally change that place. If they're renting the apartments now, in 5 years or so or less, they can actually sell them as condos because they have gone after historic tax credits to do their work, but they can't condo them for 5 years. But before they condo them, if they would make that change, they could actually sell those apartments for more. The challenge is, would they sell for enough more to cover the costs? And that's the reality that those entrepreneurs are up against. But those same guys have built or have under construction Urban Exchange, which in the general massing and the position and the overall form and structure is a good urban design for Harrisonburg. The face of the building comes out all the way to the street on the two primary sides. There's no parking around it. There's parking underneath it. The buildings are positioned so that actually between the buildings is kind of a long, narrow court, which will have retail functions, probably a fitness center, probably a cafe. I don't even know exactly what, but it's a nice idea, so that you have buildings that are relating well to the rest of the city, and in between them there is their own relationship in between them, so you have a hierarchy of going from the city scale down to the building scale and down to the space between the buildings. So they're actually doing something very good. So there it is, entrepreneurs who understand these values. So much of what has happened in the growth and development of downtown has been entrepreneurs building who don't understand these values. So there were a lot of city officials here this evening, and they've all seen it before, my presentation before, but they're on board with these ideas. Entrepreneurs need to be planning, start a business, because Harrisonburg is booming. It's tough. This is not a time to get a loan from a bank. They're not making normal loans. So what can you do? Otherwise, speak up, talk to your friends, talk about it. Be on your church council, help your church to make a decision to actually build their new building out by the street rather than set it back and put parking around it. So we've talked about what entrepreneurs can do, what people can do to influence the organizations they belong to. I don't know. This is a good question for everybody to ask. How can we make our city into a good place?